Welcome to episode 45 of the Malt Strategy Podcast. I'm your host, John, the Strategy Wargamer, and with me today is Paul Turbett of Black Lab Games.
Thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate having you coming on this show. I am a massive fan of what you guys do, because when you guys announced that you guys are coming out working on a Battlestar Galactica game, it's just I know it's sending ripples through the entire industry. Everybody probably had like a mini heart attack when you guys announced that, because I think it's been probably almost 20 years since we all been kind of waiting for something like that.
Yeah, it's been a while. I was kind of surprised that there weren't a lot of games for such a pretty amazing franchise. So yeah.
I think they had like a MMO, which I don't think did well, and I think they had like a console game, which I think also was like a more of like a shooter up kind of game.
Yeah, I think all the console games, as far as I can tell, have been based on the original series from 1978. I think there was a console game came out at around about the same time as the TV show, but from memory, it was made before details were announced, so it was all very much based on the old TV show, but it's certainly based on the Ronald D. Moore stuff. I think the MMO was pretty popular when it first came out, but I think that trailed off. There was another mobile game came out as well, just before ours, but yeah, I think as far as I know, Deadlock's the only one that's available still today. So yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of the mobile game. I might have to look that up. But
yeah, I don't know if it's around anymore. I think it's Battlestar Galactica Squadrons, but I'm not sure if it's around anymore. So.
Okay. I actually have a couple of questions regarding mobile games, but I'm going to save that for a little later. Because I kind of, before we dive into the meat of Battlestar Galactica, I generally always want to kind of know a little bit about you before we start the podcast. So I kind of want to, before we start, I wanted to find out a little bit more about you. Like, what encouraged you to start going into developing strategy games? What was the game that set it all off, and what was your passion that kind of inspired you?
So I've been making games personally for quite a long time. I actually started making video games in the 80s myself. If that gives some idea of how long I've been doing this for. I think strategy games are interesting to me because I think they're pretty accessible to anybody that wants to play games. Like a lot of the big franchise, the big games these days, they're very much action-based, and so it's all about reflexes, and they can be quite hard to play for a lot of people. Whereas a strategy game, in particular like a turn-based game, it doesn't have the same kind of there's not much pressure, shall we say? So it means that pretty much anybody can pick up and play a strategy game if you can take the time to think about it and work out how to play it. I like the idea of not having that sort of time pressure and just being accessible to a decent sized audience like that. So,
what was kind of the game that kind of inspired you to get into strategy gaming?
It's hard to pick out one particular one. I mean, in recent times, I think things like the XCOM series is pretty awesome. So that's definitely something that you sort of look towards, and also probably some like the SIG games as well. Although the games we do are quite different to them, they sort of stand out, and I think those ones are quite inspiring to work towards. So.
Okay, awesome. So what are your roles and responsibilities at Black Lab Games?
So I actually started the company probably about 10 years ago now. These days, my responsibilities, I do basically all the sort of the management of the studio. It's in all the project management, sort of the producer type stuff. But my background also is in programming, so I do some of the coding as well. Not as much these days as what I used to. And also I'm sort of liaising with our publisher, Slytherin, pretty frequently as well when it comes up to things like working with their marketing team or their production team or whatever. So a bit of a variety of tasks. So a bit of hands-on development, a bit of design work, a bit of coding, and just generally making sure everything runs smoothly.
Wow. So you're kind of like a jack of all trades.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I think that's kind of. I mean, we're a pretty small-sized team, so we don't have the luxury of bigger teams that have very specialised roles. So pretty much everyone that works here has to be able to do at least two things. So
when you guys started out, how big was your team?
Well, when it started, it was just me. Then it's kind of grown over time. When we started Battlestar, there was 2.5, and now there's 6 or 7 of us. So yeah,
You started Battlestar Galactica Deadlock with 2.5 people
yeah,
and
yeah.
made that incredible game with 2.5 people.
We started. By the time the game was finished, we probably had sort of 4 or 5. So we brought people on as the production moved along. So, but I think we'd sort of proven the previous game we did, Starhammer. We'd proven that the core team, the seniors, we'd proven that we could make a product and it was pretty decent. And then from there we got the support from Slytherin to grow the team over the next few years while we develop the game.
Yeah, that takes some incredible skill that you guys did that with 2.5 guys, and then of course you guys grew, but just to start that huge game shows the kind of talent and skill you guys have.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's fair to say that we definitely sort of, as the phrase goes, punch above our weight. It's kind of amusing when I see people talk about, interviews in the industry, talking about their game with a small team and they've only got like 40 people. And yeah, that kind of makes me laugh.
Yeah, because what you guys did with Battlestar Galactica, I thought you guys, honestly, to be honest with you guys, when Battlestar Galactica Deadlock released, I was just like, geez, they must have had like a couple of dozen people working on this game because the stuff that you guys added between the music, the graphics, the storyline, like just thinking about the questions before, as I was kind of setting stuff up for this interview, I was like, they must have had probably like maybe half a dozen people just work on the script, the storyline itself.
No, we've got Anthony, one guy that does all the writing for it, and he also did a lot of our systems design as well.
Wow. That's incredible.
I mean, we had some contractors as well. Like we outsourced some of the art to a production studio, but we also did some in-house as well. But things like music, we've got an excellent musician named Ash who we work with. So he does a lot of sort of film and TV stuff, and we met him and he wanted to do some game stuff. So when we need music, we just get in touch and he makes it for us. So we've kind of got a bit of a roster of external partners we can work with on bits and pieces. But yeah, it's just the core team's quite small. So
that music and it's done all by one person. That's kind of that's one of the things. Like when I initially played the game, that was the one I would say probably one of the first things that kind of stuck out because it was like so. And then you guys had this thing where the music kind of transitioned, and it was a feature that you guys installed. I think when you did the planning phase, like when you issued your orders to your ships, and then when you click turn, and then it kind of did this transition, like it went from like more of like a relaxing, kind of like a little tense music, and then when you click turn, then things just kind of like built up, but it was a seamless transition. Like I thought it was all one track.
That's interesting. We actually the way we've done that is actually there's 2 layers. There's like an ambient sort of background layer, and then there's another layer that's got a bit more intensity. And so it basically fades one of the layers in and out depending on the action, what's going on at the time. Yeah. So and that's like Ash's musical genius, and also it's a pretty cool system that we managed to make work as well. So yeah. I think that's something we learned from Starhammer. We had sort of very intense, full-on music, and it wasn't really great to listen to while you were trying to think about planning your moves. You got this like bombastic, in-your-face music. It didn't really work that well. So that's just one of the learnings from that previous game.
So before we dive more into the core of the game, I was kind of curious on how everything like kind of set up. How did you guys get to design and develop a Battlestar Galactica game? How did the IP holder, which I believe was NBC, did they reach out to you, or did you reach out to NBC? I know Slytherin had a significant hand in setting that up.
Yeah, no, they definitely did, yeah. So what happened was that we'd released Starhammer in, I think it was 2015, and that came out and did what it did, was okay. So Slytherin have a developers conference every year where they get all the departments from around the world all to sort of fly in together, and we all sort of meet each other and hang out and stuff. And I was talking with one of the producers there who just asked me a question, said, so based on Starhammer, if there was another IP that you do with a sort of a space combat type game, what sort of IPs would do you think you could do something with? And so I just kind of rattled off a few names and didn't really think too much about it because you don't. And then about a month later, I got a call, and it was from Slytherin. They said, they're talking to NBC, and the Battlestar license is available. Would you be interested in doing something with that? And I kind of thought about that for about a millisecond, and absolutely we would, of course. Why wouldn't you? So yeah, they went and they actually got us to put together a proposal. So we put together a pitch on what we'd do with it, and we worked that through a bit, and then went and talked to NBC, and they all worked out the details, and here we are.
Wow. Okay. Wow. That's that seems like so seamless and easy. I mean, it seems like you guys like that. It just kind of was almost like overnight. I mean, it was a couple of weeks, but it was almost seemed like it was.
Oh, it was more than a couple of weeks. I can assure you that. It took a while. Yeah, but honestly, we couldn't have done this, without all Slytherin and their support. So they were very awesome in organising that, and obviously they've got a pretty good track record. They've released a lot of games in the past. They've done licenses and that kind of stuff. So I think that was very pivotal in making sure this all happened. So yeah.
So you guys have the Battlestar Galactica license from NBC. You guys made the proposal, and you kind of already got the design down. So the question I have is, how do you go about designing a game for Battlestar Galactica? I mean, was it something? Did you already automatically know the kind of game that you guys were going to make, even before you were talking to NBC, or was it something that was kind of developing over a course of a couple of weeks or months?
So we actually had a couple of different ideas for how we wanted to do it, what we could do with it. So we kind of put them out, and there's just a lot of discussions between myself and the other leads just about all the different aspects of the game, where it would be set, what's the storyline, how does it play, what's it look like, all that kind of stuff. There's just a lot of talking, a lot of brainstorming, a lot of getting ideas out there. This works, doesn't reject that, all that kind of stuff. Going through the bit of a process. I think we realised pretty quickly that the core of the game is space combat, and it's about obviously strategically positioning ships and using different tools and tactics to defeat your enemy. So pretty quickly that is why we ended up in the first Silent War, because we if you've seen the TV show, you know where it starts, you know where it ends. There's not a huge number of different types of ships and that kind of stuff. So setting it with somewhere within the framework of the TV show time frame didn't really work that well. Whereas the first Silent War was this completely unexplored area that obviously had a lot more conflict in it, which is what we need for our game. So it was a pretty natural fit. So that was probably the first sort of major decision we made. And then it was just from there, just going through a process of talking about the kind of things you would do in the game, what were the different tactical options you had and that kind of stuff. So, and I guess another decision we made pretty early on also was to have a bit of asymmetry between the two different sides as well. So the Colonials have their particular technology and way of operating and designing ships and that kind of stuff, and the Cylons would do things a bit differently. So that's why the Cylons have the hacking and what they call the comet PCMs, that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Since you guys launched a game, you kind of honestly only had, I believe, 2 ships, actually probably I think 3 ships that you could actually use in the game, because you had the Battlestar Galactica, and then you had the 1970s series and a couple of fighters that you can kind of use in this game. The rest of the models you guys had to kind of design from scratch, right?
That's correct. Yeah. That's our art director Anthony, who basically looked at the TV series. He looked at both the TV series. Basically deconstructs what makes up a Battlestar Galactica ship. So you get a bit of understanding of the, I suppose you'd say, the DNA of the ships. What's their look? What parts make them up? Then just builds back up from there and designs things that sort of fit the universe, while still being their own thing.
Special thank you for making the Adamant class. I really love that class, and when it starts shooting, it's a thing of beauty.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
So you guys added multiple features over the course of all these expansion packs and DLCs that you guys have. One of the big ones that I know it's a small thing to some people, but for me, I would say it's a huge thing, is the chatter system, and it's to a lot of people, it's like, oh, it's just background audio. But the one amazing thing about that you guys did is 1,100 recordings, because each time I'm playing, it's a different chatter system. It's a different guy. It's a different woman, and it's always something different, something unique. And then I found out it's 1,100 recordings. How did you guys go about doing that?
Yeah, that was a pretty epic task, actually. That did take quite a while. So basically, there's a bit of an event system in the game. So when certain things happen, it knows about certain things going on. And so we wrote a whole bunch of different lines based around different occurrences. So for every event that could happen, we wrote a stack of different lines that were made sense for that event occurring. So you've got at the start of the game, like the start of a battle, it's all set up and positioning and stuff like that. Then shots start firing and it gets all pretty intense. And then towards the end of the battle, one side looks like they're going to win, and it sort of becomes a bit more of a sort of clean-up sort of operation. So we just wrote literally hundreds of different lines, and then we worked with our audio producer who organised all the talent to record them, and so we did that and set them all up. So yeah, it was a pretty vast operation. It wasn't trivial. But I think it's been worth it. So yeah, people seem to like it, and I do agree that's quite a lot to the game. Yeah.
I mean, that took a significant amount of time, I'm assuming.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. I mean, it was a while ago now, so I can't give you much. I can't be too specific, but it certainly would have been days of recording time. So yeah.
Besides the chatter system, I've noticed, and I know you guys mentioned in numerous features and documentation that you guys made some AI improvements, right, over the course of season 1. And I seen the dev diaries, and once I played it, I automatically noticed it. You guys did some remarkable things with AI. And you guys only had, you said about like a couple of people on the development team. Did you guys have one sole guy that working on the AI? Because that seems like a lot of coding to get into, to kind of like have the AI kind of think on its feet. Because one of the key things was like, if a missile's coming, right, and it's flying past a Battlestar, right, and it's heading toward Adamant, and the fighters that are going around the Battlestar have nothing to do, they would actually go after the missile. So I'm kind of curious, how, did it require a significant amount of effort to develop this AI? Was that like a core piece?
Yeah, I mean, for any strategy game, AI is very important. It's pretty much the core of the game, for the single player part anyway. And if it's not up to scratch, then that can make the game pretty not fun. So it's something that we've been evolving quite a lot over the last few years. It was something we spent a lot of time on before release. And I think that work was putting in foundations of the core system of how it works. So I mean, there's two parts basically. There's a framework for your AI, and then there's the actual decision-making part. So the framework is like scaffolding for a system. So making sure that was easily extensible, that we could add new options, new decision points, and that kind of stuff. So that took quite a long time during the core development. And then we've been getting feedback from players post-release about, they like this, they don't like that, they find this hard or whatever. And so that then allows us to make adjustments to the actual decision points, or the inputs when it's deciding what to do. It's something we've kind of tuned with each release since launch. And
you guys had to design, do you guys have to design two AIs? Because you have the strategic component and you have the tactical component, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. The strategic one's probably a bit easier because it doesn't have as many decisions to make. It's just kind of got different focuses at different times through the campaign. So that part wasn't such a big deal, but it's the same framework. It's just that it's got different inputs into each one as to what it's trying to achieve each time.
In regards of developing Battlestar Galactica, the numerous DLCs that you guys have, the Season 2 that you guys recently launched, and the original game when you guys originally launched it, the one question I have is, what was the most challenging aspect of developing this game? From storyline to AI, what was the thing that kind of made you kind of hunker down and be like, okay, we have to get this done. How do we do it?
I don't know if it's only one thing. There's actually quite a lot. I think the consoles have definitely been challenging. Trying to make the game run on consoles isn't trivial.
So talking about consoles, what was the process there? Like, you guys had a successful PC launch. I would say very successful in my opinion, but you had a very successful PC launch. And where was the decision to make the console version? Did you guys like say, all right, we did the PC version, let us try to tap this new market where people have PS4s and Xboxes?
No, we actually decided to do the console versions right at the start, and we actually were hoping to try and get them all released simultaneously, but that was probably a bit ambitious on our part, so that didn't quite work out. The console versions were started before the game even came out on PC. It just took a while to get them completed, so that's why they were delayed by a bit. Yeah.
And I'm assuming it required a lot more, I would say, work, because you're porting a game that is designed for like keyboard and mouse with the WASD keys to a PS4 or Xbox One controller. Was that transition smooth, or did you guys have to do a lot of trial and error?
So the Starhammer, the game we did beforehand, came out on PS4 and Xbox One as well. So we'd kind of done it before. So we had the basis of a control scheme already in place. We already knew what to do. It just needed a bit of extra tuning. I think, although on PC you don't necessarily use it very much, you can press space and you get this radio menu pops up, and that was a decision that was made as part of making sure we had like a controller-friendly control scheme, and that was done right from the start. So, pretty with consoles is the certification requirements you have to go through with the different manufacturers. They can be quite difficult, and also just making sure that the performance is up to scratch, because they're not brand new consoles these days. They're pretty old, relatively old technology at the moment. So, something that runs on a 3-year-old PC doesn't necessarily run so well on a 5-year-old console. So, yeah.
I'm kind of curious because I always kind of battle, should I get a PS4, should I get an Xbox One? I have not yet done that. I'm kind of curious, if you had to kind of compare the PC version and the Xbox and PlayStation 4 version, like in terms of graphical performance, how much decreased is the console versions? Did you guys have to bump it down quite a bit, or is it just almost to where the PC version is?
So, so PCs have varying capabilities as well. So some people have, quite old machines, and some people have pretty new ones. So they might have a 600 series GeForce versus a 2000 RTX, whatever. So even on PC, there's a pretty, it's a wide variability. I think the consoles are probably graphically equivalent to like if you had your graphic settings set to sort of not necessarily the lowest, but one up from the lowest. But then if you've got like an Xbox One X or a PS4 Pro, I think the resolution's slightly higher on those, so those ones look a bit better.
Okay, so what you're basically saying is stick with PC, and so I can max out those graphics.
I mean, I guess the thing with a PC is that if you got the money, you can always upgrade it to better stuff. So yeah, there's new stuff coming out all the time. So.
Yeah, I have a AMD 560 on my iMac, and I get very impressed by the level of graphics that you guys have in this game. And I'm only playing a 560. I'm not even playing at max graphics. So I can only imagine what the top tier players like the historical gamer who has 1080 NVIDIA. So, and then I know a couple people that have 2080. So I can only imagine the kind of graphics they're getting on their end.
Yeah. No, we've got on our Discord channel. We've got a sub channel called Game Media, where basically people post all their screenshots and they make GIFs and that kind of stuff. And some of the stuff I see, like I look at it and it just blows me away what some of the people create. Some of their, the way they frame the sun in the right spot to get the reflections off the ships and that kind of stuff. It's pretty amazing. So yeah.
Yeah, because it's really incredible. I remember when I was doing my review for the game, I was kind of like going over the models, and as you release the DLCs, I think it was after Anubis. I remember looking at it and I was just like, this to me looks like a movie, honestly, because like I'm looking at it and you have the sun reflections off the hull and the damage from like missiles and guns hitting the the enemy ships and your ship, and you see explosions. I mean, it looks really remarkable. So I got to give my hats off to you on that. That was, every time I play it, I always get just amazed. And what I get amazed more at is I have a mid-range graphics card, and I'm able to do that on a mid-range graphics card.
Yeah, no, that's very cool. Yeah.
Since we're talking about consoles, you guys made an announcement, I think it was about a week or two ago, and you're going to not the bigger consoles, but you're going to a more smaller, more popular console, the Nintendo Switch.
Yes, that is correct.
So this has really kind of made everybody go, wow, because, well, it's Battlestar Galactica Deadlock. Now it's coming to the Switch. So I know you mentioned before that you had the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One version heading over to the when you started development for the game. When did the Switch pop up?
That idea only came up last year. We're at the end of 2019, so early 2018. It has taken quite a long time to get done because we had to go through a lot of work to make it happen. Because the Switch is not the most powerful device out there. So actually getting it running at a decent frame rate did take quite a while. There's a lot of work involved in that. But it's almost here. So yeah.
Now you mentioned with the Xbox and PlayStation ones, like the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, you said it's like one or two up from the lowest graphical settings, and then you mentioned the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X is a little bit above that. Where does the Switch fall into that? Because the trailer that I saw, it still looked like really good graphics.
Yeah, so I mean, with the Switch, because it's got a smaller screen, you can get away with a bit more, and it still works. It still looks good. So I mean, it's I'd say overall it's probably similar to the Xbox One and PS4, like in terms of level of detail. It's kind of helped by the smaller screen, but even like when it's plugged into a TV, it still looks pretty decent. But I think there's just a lot of work done in optimization, just to make sure that it ran as fast as possible. There's a few like effects that don't make a huge amount that are there that we had to take out. Sorry, some effects that would have been running on the other versions that add a tiny bit, but not a huge amount, which would scale them back because of the performance cost. And we also found some ways to, like some of the more, graphics intensive stuff in the backgrounds that we managed to do all the details on that without losing anything as well. So yeah, there's a lot of work gone into optimizations and just finding different ways to do things more efficiently to work well on the mobile. So.
But the core game is like it's still the core game, right? Like all the missions, the strategic.
It's exactly the same as the PC game. Just it's got obviously the console controls, but also because the Switch has a touch screen, we've got some touch screen support as well.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So I'm gonna kind of sidebar the Switch because I want to kind of come back to that. But you said touch controls. Yeah. And I'm a huge mobile gamer. I literally, when I'm at work, I have a break for like 15 minutes and there's no work to be done. I literally pull out my iPhone or my iPad and I kind of, game a little bit, whether it be Roller Coaster Tycoon or Afghanistan 11. I got to ask, you mentioned that you implemented touch controls on the Switch. Is there a possibility maybe down the road that a mobile might be a consideration?
Probably not. No, sorry.
Okay, I had to ask. It would be epic, I think. But I remember since when you guys mentioned that you guys are coming out on the Switch, I had to kind of say, all right, you know what? I'm not. The last Nintendo thing that I owned was, I think, the Nintendo from the 80s and 90s. Now I'm going to have to buy the Switch because that's the only way I'm going to be able to get my Battlestar Galactica fix on the go.
Yeah, actually, it's the only way you better get it on the go as well. So,
yeah. Unless you have one of those big gaming laptops that kind of hulk in the back that you back tap.
That's true. Yeah, you do that.
So I gotta ask, what inspired you to bring it to the Nintendo Switch? What was kind of like the kind of thing that set it off? Was like because Nintendo Switches, from what I've noticed, there's kind of like numerous IPs and games are kind of porting over to that platform, and I feel like it's almost like a migration, like at this point, because every game I see on Steam is like, oh, by the way, we're coming out with a Switch version. So is it kind of like because that console is just exploding with popularity now?
I think that's a big part of it. Yeah, just the fact that there's an audience there, and it's kind of you're talking about like on the go. Like the only way to play it on the go will be on the Switch. So that was probably the only way we could see that actually working. Going back to the bringing it on mobile, I think the issue there is more to do with the business models on mobile and how they work. Games don't tend to do too well unless they're free to play, and that's not really something that we do or are interested in doing. So, trying to charge a premium price for a game to actually make it worthwhile is not something that really works on mobile. So that's a bit of a problem there. I think the Switch as a platform, obviously it's proven to be quite popular at the moment. So we just thought we'd give it a go and see what happens.
Do you think like if you guys released like I guess the core game or at least maybe the first few missions of Battlestar Galactica like on an iPhone or iPad, that it would kind of get people to play the game and then add like a DLC in-app purchase kind of thing? Do you think something like that would work?
Yeah, I'm not really sure, to be honest. It's not a market that we've kind of looked at recently. Like, it's been a long time since I've done anything on mobile. So I honestly don't know whether that would work or not these days. Yeah. But I mean, that's also something that, we probably need to talk with Slytherin about to get their input, and they would probably know more about that than what we would. So.
Last question about the Switch. Was it difficult to transition the core game, the core PC game, to the Switch in regards to the code? And I know you mentioned the controls, that you guys just had to kind of alter them for the Switch because it's a little different. You also have the touch controls. But in terms of like converting the game, was it seamless, or was there a lot of hiccups during that process?
Getting it actually running wasn't that much of a big deal. Getting it to run at a decent frame rate probably was. And that's where most of the time and effort went, was just optimizing it down and finding ways to do things a bit differently so that it still played the same and did what we wanted to do, but at an acceptable frame rate.
Is it like running at 720p or 1080p?
It's 720 on the device, and I think it's 1080 when you plug it into a TV.
Oh, okay. So you hear it first, people here. Plug it into your TV.
Yeah.
So kind of going off the Switch, I want to kind of go back to the game. So when you guys started out with Battlestar Galactica, game just launched, was it your intention to actually have multiple seasons? Because when you guys announced season 2, I was like, okay, so there's season 2, which means there's a possibility of 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, so that's kind of something that's it's evolved a bit over time. When we first launched it, we had plans for some DLCs, but it was kind of a case of seeing what happened initially to work out whether, how long it could go for. But once we sort of had, I think, the base game and then the Broken Alliance, once we'd done that, we sort of put our plans in place for what we're going to do after that. So, yeah, we're just going through and doing it.
Okay. So since you guys released the game, you added multiple new missions, ships, missions, AI improvements. By the way, I especially love the Anubis survival mode. That is epic. I honestly, when I was playing that, I felt like this was like I was playing the TV series, because I felt like Dama in there. I'm kind of curious. I got to ask, was that kind of like your intention to? When you were making Operation Anubis, to kind of give you kind of like a second Cylon War kind of feel?
Yeah, that is exactly the intention, yeah.
I figured, because I was just like, this feels so like that.
Yeah. I mean, we had a lot of people sort of asking for that kind of thing, and it just made sense, so yeah.
So you guys added all these new enhancements to the game. I got to ask, like, I know you guys have probably future development for the game planned. Is there anything like huge that we should expect, like in terms of more modifications to like the AI or possibly different mods for the game?
So there's a roadmap that's floating around, which came out around about the time when Season 2 started. We do have a number of things we're working on at the moment, basically addressing some requests from the community. Some of them are things like graphical updates to the officer portraits. There's we're looking at some bigger fleets for multiplayer. We're probably going to be doing a bit of work on improving making some improvements to multiplayer going forward as well. And I can't remember off the top of my head all the stuff we had, but more loading screens.
I noticed you guys had looking at it now. You guys are increasing the fleet size tier.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So that's something that we'll be looking at particularly for multiplayer, just so we can get sort of bigger, more epic multiplayer battles.
And there's a thing here called photography mode. Can you tell us?
Yeah. Okay, so that's kind of inspired by, again, some of the screenshots we're seeing people putting out from the community. And it's a thing you see in a lot of games these days where you can stop, and if there's a nice scene, you can take a photo of it. So we thought, well, why not? Let's put in some tools so people can do that. Make some awesome screensavers and share them with your friends and that kind of stuff. So yeah.
In regards to multiplayer, so a couple of games are doing this, and I think it's like one or two of them. But a few games are kind of doing this thing called for a cross-platform game. I think Slytherin even has a few games that are like you can play on the iPad and you could play players that are on the PC version. Is that possible with Battlestar Galactica? Like if I play on the Switch, can I play TortugaPower or Historical Gamer on the PC?
It's not at the moment, and I guess to make that work is something we'd need to have conversations with the console manufacturers to see what their thoughts were on that, which is not something we've done yet. It's not off the table, but it's just something we haven't sort of gone through yet. So
you guys made an incredible storyline for this game, and you're on season 2. And the question that is always in the back of my mind is, are you guys ever going to connect the first Cylon War with the second Cylon War?
That's a hard one to answer without.
Does it even make sense to go into the second Cylon War? Because
from a gameplay point of view, it's kind of a hard one to work out how that would work. Like you basically take, at the moment we've got, quite a number of different ships on both sides. With the second Cylon War, it's basically, there's 2 or 3 types of battle stars and a single base star. So it kind of doesn't make a lot of sense unless we're going to, put in extra ships that don't exist in the TV show, which could work. But it's I'm not sure how I feel about that. But I do feel that for a video game, and it's important that this is about video games. The first Silent War is definitely the best place for that medium.
And this is NBC give you a lot of creative expression, I would say, in regards to just developing any kind of storyline you guys want.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, we obviously we have to get everything run past them and approved, but no, they've been pretty good. All the things that have been in the game so far have been our ideas where we've said this is what we want to do, and they might have a few bits of feedback and change a few things, but yeah, it's pretty much all us. So yeah.
And there's a new Battlestar Galactica movie coming out, and from what I understand, it's supposed to be a remake, another a reboot. And I'm kind of curious. Would it be able to tie in with your current game with Deadlock?
Honestly, I heard about that via the internet at the same time as everyone else did, so I don't have any actual information about that personally. So I don't know. I would love it if they do set it in the first time, or if they use some of our ships, that would be pretty awesome. But yeah, I honestly don't know what their plans are for that. So.
Yes, NBC, if you're listening, I want the adamant in that movie.
Yeah, no, we all do.
So the one question, I was talking to a Historical Gamer one time about Battlestar Galactica, and I was raving about it. And I was saying, it would be amazing as Battlestar Galactica Deadlock kind of progresses and more seasons come in, and we get further and further into the Silent War. And we know that Adama is in this first Silent War. He's a young kid, and they even made a mini movie on it, which you can buy on iTunes, that he's in it. And then I'm assuming, a couple other characters from the actual TV series, in terms of the characters, are actually in the first Cylon War. So the one question I had was, is it possible, if you guys do move in further and to have guests from the actual 2000 TV series, would there even be is there a possibility that you can have Edward James Olmos come on the show and do voiceover work?
Theoretically, maybe. I don't know what the chances of that are. Yeah, I guess there's a lot of factors involved in that. Those kind of actors are I guess, pretty in demand, and whether they want to be in a video game or not, I don't know. So, yeah, who knows? Time will tell.
And I think that's all the questions I have. Those are the questions that were kind of like rattling around my head ever since you guys released this game, which is incredible. So the last question I always ask everybody that comes on the show is, what are you drinking? I know it's 9 a.m. there, so you don't have, I'm assuming, I'm sure you're probably not having a hard whiskey or anything, but what are you having this morning?
Yeah, no, given that it's sort of 9 o'clock in the morning here, it's just coffee and water at the moment. So.
Okay, that's a good combo. I am actually having coffee myself, and finished a beer earlier on. But coffee.
Yeah, no, beer in a few hours.
Noontime, is a good time. But a special thank you for coming on the show, and a really deep thank you and a really big appreciation for what you guys do. Because honestly, when you guys announced Battlestar Galactica Deadlock, you have no idea how many people were just like, wow, this is incredible. And, when you guys first announced it, I was just like, and you had the trailer, it was incredible. And I was always kind of like on the edge of my seat. Well, the last couple of studios that did this, it kind of was not good at all. And then you guys came out with this game, and it was just like, blew my mind. It was just incredible. And I know a lot of people are raving about this game, and you guys keep making new seasons. So thank you for doing that. And I look forward to what you guys are cooking up in the future. Any tidbits that we should expect after the Nintendo Switch launch?
We're just working on our next update at the moment, so that'll be out at some point, but we can't really say exactly when yet. So yeah, there's definitely more stuff to come, so stay tuned.
That's awesome. So Paul, thanks again for coming on the show, and we hope to hear from you again, and thank you again.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. It's been great.
That does it for this episode. We hope you guys enjoyed it. Be sure to rate our podcast, and we will see you next time.